Let's get started. Our first panel of the afternoon will discuss major developments that are transforming ad tech. Our facilitator is Andrea Longman, Vice President of Account Management at Environics Analytics, the title sponsor of our event today. In the past 25 years, Andrea has worked both client side in marketing roles and vendor side in data, analytics, and insights roles. She is a chartered marketer and sits on the CMA Insights Council. Over to you, Andrea.
Thanks, Sarah. It's my pleasure today to introduce to you the other panelists. So joining us is Shruti Kopakar, who is the head of product marketing at Quantcast, where she leads a group of product marketers responsible for bringing AI-driven solutions to market that can help both publishers and marketers know and grow their audiences. Drew Weicker is the VP of North American Sales at DoubleVerify. He has been in the advertising industry for nearly 20 years with experience spanning across agencies, publishers, and ad tech. He has spent the last 8 years with DoubleVerify, helping to grow the world of verification, bringing greater trust and transparency to the digital advertising economy. Brianna Herbert is the product marketing manager at Facebook Canada. She partners with engineering and client teams to transform product innovation into strategic business solutions for Canadian advertisers, agencies, and partners. Before Facebook, Brianna spent time, about 10 years, working as a brand manager, leading business and advertising strategy across several industries, including personal care, film and television, and food and beverage. Thanks, guys. This is going to be an exciting conversation. Today's panel topic is a privacy rethink, adjusting to the major developments transforming ad tech. So a little context for everyone before we start the panel, if that makes sense. So in response to calls for more consumer transparency and control, major privacy initiatives have been impacting the digital advertising world. On the web, browser-level blocking, third-party ad blocking apps, and new laws like Europe's GDPR and the California Consumer Privacy Act are leading the gradual phasing out of the third-party advertising cookie. In the mobile space, significant privacy updates on mobile operating systems are also causing marketers to rethink their tracking and targeting practices. Today, our panel will discuss the impact of these developments, the new privacy-oriented solutions emerging, and how marketers can best adjust to the new environment. So before we get into it, just a reminder again, as Sarah mentioned, there will be a short Q&A at the end of this panel. And throughout our conversation, we really want you to type your questions into the Zoom Q&A at the bottom. And we'll do our best to answer your questions at that time. Okay, guys, let's start. Let's start with the changes happening on the web, and specifically the phasing out of the third-party cookie. What is the impact? Drew, can you kick us off?
Sure, absolutely. Happy to do that. And thank you, Andrea, and to the entire CMA for having us here today. Really excited to be talking about this all-important topic. The joke is we live in a world that's constantly being built around us. There is change constantly happening, and these laws are affecting different businesses in different ways. Certainly with third-party cookies going away, we've seen at least a significant increase in interest in first-party cookie collection. And I do think that there are a lot of creative concepts that are coming forward. When one door closes, so to speak, other doors tend to open. And we are seeing some of that creativity really start to emerge in a meaningful way that will help address the important needs of the privacy laws, while also assist marketers in achieving their key goals and KPIs.
Okay. Brianna, what do you think?
Thanks, Andrea. And this is a great question, I think, to kick off the panel today. And I think really points to larger shifts happening in the broader digital ads ecosystem driven by people's evolving expectations. So I think I'll start by examining the industry from that scope and then come down a little bit. So we know that leading businesses need to innovate their data practices now to meet people's evolving expectations around both privacy and relevancy. And we know today consumers, and as a consumer, we have infinite choices when it comes to digital advertising and our digital attention, so to speak. But we expect messages from brands that are personal to us. So there's 4.5 billion people active on the internet today. No two of those people, including all of us, expect the exact same thing. But we expect experiences that are tailored to us, to our tastes, to the medium that we're using, and in the format we prefer. And all of those personalized experiences are powered by data. Because of that data, advertisers, businesses of all sizes are able to reach people with the right message at the right time to spark either discovery of a new brand or service, compare across brands, and then eventually, hopefully, make a purchase. And we know that this personalized advertising and experiences are effective for marketers, but we also know they're more relevant for people. They give people a better experience when you're shown an ad or a product or service that you will probably love, that feels relevant to you, that's much more engaging. And so I think there's a balance here between people's expectations of personalized experiences, but also an increased expectation and a want for privacy. People want their data to be protected, and they expect companies and industry players to provide that transparency in how their data is being used, and also choice into whether they want that data to be used, and to respect those choices ongoing. So I think that this balance of privacy and personalization is part of that broader evolution of the industry. And we'll get into this more today, but I think we're starting to see that in several ways. Governments are implementing new regulations, companies are evolving their policies to put control back in the hands of people. And that means that businesses need to and are starting to think differently about how they reach people. So to get back to your question, the impact of some of these changes is that if businesses don't evolve to meet this moment and these evolving expectations, what we'll see is a world, or a digital world anyways, that's dominated once again by advertising that's less personal, that's less disruptive. And not only does that create a poor experience for people, but it's also less efficient for advertisers. It's more costly. So I think from my perspective, to tie that together, the personalized advertising does not need to be at odds with people's privacy. And I think that's a theme that I'll revert back to throughout a lot of the panel today. And I think that together we can all take steps with user privacy in mind, and also maintain that performance and that personalization that people have come to expect and that businesses have relied on for success as well. And I think there's several ways we can look at doing that. So some of the ways that businesses are evolving with this changing landscape is looking at providing people visibility and ability to change how their data is used, using tools that reflect and respect people's privacy choices, and then also source data in new ways that creates value for people across the customer journey.
Brianna, keep that in mind. We have a question coming and we're going to flesh it out a little bit more. Having said that, Shruti, what would you like to add to this conversation at this point?
Nothing much really to add there. But just two things come to mind when I think about how this deprecation of third-party cookies affects the advertising on open internet. The first thing is, and I think all of us know, but it helps just say it out loud, targeting, measurement, and attribution is going to get challenging. There's no doubt about that. What third-party cookies did was helped stitch together cross-site user behavior, giving an even deeper understanding into consumer intent and interest. With that gone, of course, these three things will get challenging, but I do think that it is also an opportunity for reinvention. Just like Drew mentioned, newer, more creative solutions are being proposed. It is an opportunity for all of us as an industry to take a look at it and say, well, is there a better solution to this that also respects consumer privacy, their right to choice and consent? So that's one thing that comes to mind. The other thing is, on the open internet, it really was third-party cookies that stitched together the landscape, so to speak, of the DMPs and the DSPs and the SSPs. So all of these different components of an advertiser's tech stack were sort of stitched together via third-party cookies. So not only will these systems need to find different ways of interoperating with each other, we will likely see some consolidation, maybe within a category, potentially across categories. So sort of those are the two things that impact in terms of impact that I can think of. And how this matters to marketers is that they need to start actively thinking about all of these things. Are my tech partners thinking about consent? Are my tech partners thinking about maybe providing a more integrated offering where I don't have to worry about how the three systems work with each other, so on and so forth. So yeah, that's just two more thoughts to add there.
Okay, I think this is a great kickoff to the rest of the questions because, as I said, it's the pink elephant in the room that we're all handling and trying to get our heads around. So for participants that are logged in today, we do want to just raise the fact that the CMA has put out a CMA ad tech overview doc that's available on the website. And there's a section that explicitly addresses the impact of the phasing out of third-party cookies. So if you want more information on this beyond what we just talked about, please check out that document, and I'll refer to it a few more times in today's session. But Shruti, I'm going to ask you a question explicitly now. I'm going to pick on you. So you're ready. Is the phasing out of the third-party cookies because of decisions made by the browsers, or is it because of the government regulation that we talked about at the beginning?
Yeah, great question. There tends to be some confusion around that usually. It is because of the decisions that have been made by the browsers. It started with Apple deprecating it with ITP, Firefox and others followed, and now Google Chrome is going to deprecate by 2022. That being said, public is increasingly aware of privacy. There are privacy regulations popping up all over. You have GDPR, then CCPA, Canada has PIPEDA, Singapore has PDPA. So there's that. And then finally, these tech giants have been under regulatory scrutiny. So it's not entirely surprising that they have positioned some of these changes as being compliance inspired or privacy forward. But definitely it is due to the browsers making those changes.
Okay. All right. So even in our kickoff response, we all agreed many marketers are still really heavily reliant on the third-party cookie. And as Shruti talked about with the major browsers, Google phase out by 2022 on Chrome, this is going to be the nail in the coffin for this type of data tracking. If you're aiming as a marketer just to track your website's visitors' behavior, their preferences, the basic demographics while they're on your website, you're probably not going to be deeply impacted by this because first-party cookies are still safe. That's one element over there. But if you're a marketer that relies on the robust data from the third-party cookies that Shruti, Brianna, and Drew talked about for online advertising, for pop-up ads, for pinpointed audience targeting strategy, you're going to need to really follow the news around this phase out and consider the alternative strategies as the phase out nears. Like, this is going to be critically important to you because you can't let it just go. Having said that, we as an industry have seen a lot of different solutions emerge and been talked about that aims to offer alternative tools. And some of these are more heavily on first-party data, like Drew talked about, lumped into more anonymous segments potentially. Some are ad tracking solutions that use the non-personally identifiable data. And the others require a revision back to like older strategies, like contextual advertising. And Brianna kind of touched on that a little bit too. So some of the more immediate solutions to the phase out didn't meet consumer privacy expectations in the beginning, like fingerprinting, but things have really improved. Panel, can you explain some of the latest and more privacy preserving options? And Shruti, we're going to start with you and then move through the panel.
Sounds good. So, when you think of the spectrum of solutions that are available, because there are many and they will only go up before it eventually comes down. I think I can think of it as, the two ends of the spectrum are, on the one hand, you have authenticated solutions. This is based in user logins, in email IDs or phone numbers and such. One example of that on the open internet is UID 2.0 that Trade Desk has championed and now is going to make open source. This obviously, because it's authenticated, is tied to consent. So it has privacy built into it. On the other end, like you said, is this group-based or cohort-based anonymized group-based targeting. And then good example of that is Flock, Google's Flock proposal. That is considered to be or at least proposed to be privacy forward, with the intention or assumption that it will be targeting a group of individuals, no less than 1,000, and so it will protect individual privacy. An interesting thing to note about that, however, is that there are some GDPR-related concerns when it comes to Flock. And so Flock is not being tested right now in Europe, and those concerns will need to be addressed before Flock gets tested. And then you have many other solutions in the middle, which, to your point, Andrea, it takes in some authenticated data and then scales it with statistical and probabilistic methods. In general, at Quantcast, our perspective is there's likely not going to be a silver bullet. There's likely not going to be a winner takes all. We will need to look at multiple different signals. Consent is the foremost and most important one. But then in addition to that, first party, of course, contextual, the IDs and the cohorts that are proposed, and we'll have to wait and watch and see how that pans out. But those signals, when available, will be good information to use, as well as other information that is available, like time or language. These are simple things that can give insight into user behavior and intent. So we really think that it should be multiple signals that are combined. And what you really need to do that is good technology, which is AI and machine learning, that can combine all of these signals statistically. So yeah, just a quick takeaway, there will be more solutions before there are less. There'll be a period of flux. And I do not think, we do not believe there's a winner take it all. We need to look at multiple of these different approaches, and marketers need to test multiple of these different approaches.
Yep. Drew, what do you think?
Sure, absolutely. It's a great question. And, from the double verify perspective, one of the things that we're heavily focused on is continuing to drive trust and transparency across the digital ecosystem, making sure that both buyers and sellers feel that they are having clarity into their exchange, and that transaction is conducted in a transparent manner. As we look to this evolution, certainly I agree with Shruti wholeheartedly that there will be a number of solutions that will pop up before there will be some consolidation. But one thing that I have noticed is that I do feel like the marketplace is better prepared for this transition. I think even than we were for GDPR. GDPR felt like it snuck up on some of us, certainly in terms of the changes that needed to be made mechanically to the way in which we conduct business. Fortunately for DV, we didn't need to make too many significant changes when that came into effect, but I do think it helped prime the market to prepare for some of these systemic changes that will impact the way that a lot of businesses conduct business online. The reality is there's so many different types of attribution models out there. They're very complex. They're stitched together. They are tied into a number of different types of data sets and data systems, and unraveling those is no small task. But I do feel like the work is begun. It's begun earlier, and many marketers are getting prepared in a great way to accept what will become the new reality, and then work within that to make sure that they can still market and message their services accordingly. Certainly from a double verify perspective, historically, we have focused in the verification space, driving protection for most of our advertisers and our brands and our agencies. And through better protection, we organically saw advertisers increasing and improving their performance, which inspired us to come out with solutions like DV's Authentic Attention solution, which is meant to really drill into some of those engagement and awareness metrics that help to unpack and then drive predictive performance. We too have also focused on contextual solutions, tapping into ontological science and insights to help identify what types of environments are consistent with advertisers' expectations, and helping them locate and identifying those places that are appropriate for them to deliver their marketing messages. So a lot more to come. I know the unique ID was also mentioned as another potential change. I think, and Flock as well. So I think there will be, some more discussion and debate over whether or not the marketplace will move forward with a system like that. But I think the creativity is presenting itself, and it's exciting to see how the market is evolving and adapting.
Yeah, agreed. You know what, with challenges, when the GDPR came out, everybody was like, oh, because it was the first, well, maybe not the first, but it was a major earthquake that impacted us all across, even though we're in Canada, we're not part of Europe, it impacted the globe. And now it's like, this is the next one. How can we get more creative? What are the opportunities we should be looking at? We've always done this way before. We can't, what can we do now? It's almost like it's a free playground for us to start to investigate these new opportunities and start to link things together. So I really appreciate your feedback. But Brianna, I want to hear from you. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, thank you. And well, like plus what Shruti and Drew also shared, in that I don't think that there's going to be a one solution fits all right now, and no silver bullet, as Shruti said. So we are continuing to explore and build and iterate in this space as well. And our strategy really ties back to kind of what I hinted at in the first question, which is that we're looking at really finding and preserving that balance between privacy and personalization as the foundation for how we build into the future. Because despite these ecosystem changes, we know that both people and businesses continue to benefit from personalized advertising experiences, while also have this growing expectation and want for privacy, and making sure their personal data is protected and that they have transparency and choices over how it's used, shared, and handled ongoing. So we know with the changes and policies that web browsers are enacting that limit or block the use of cookies, we know inherently that cookies no longer have long-term viability for digital user identification. And so, as we talked about, by the end of the year, most browsers will block all third-party cookies by default, and also look at limiting the lifespan of first-party cookies. So I think it's clear that the industry as a whole needs to look at new ways of connecting data that do not rely on web browsers. And businesses who rely on data-driven outcomes should look at making changes now that establish more reliable connections, for instance, with their ad platforms. So can speak to a couple things that we are working on in this space. And for Facebook advertisers, one of the new business tools that businesses can look at integrating is a conversions API tool. It enables advertisers to secure and strengthen the data they use to power their marketing campaigns on Facebook. So it enables them to continue to deliver personalized ads to people while preserving privacy and people's consent. So Conversions API as a tool will augment and eventually replace the current data pipes and mechanisms that most advertisers rely on today, as those do, as you mentioned in the question, heavily rely on third-party cookies. And so Conversions API as a tool works by enabling businesses to share data directly from their servers instead of relying on web browsers. And the tool is designed to honor Facebook's user privacy controls, like off Facebook activity. If a user wants to disassociate their information from ads targeted to them, they can use that tool. It also continues to respect user consent if a user decides to opt in or opt out of having their data used to target ads to them on Facebook. So with a more reliable data connection, like Conversions API, businesses can continue providing customers with personalized ad experiences that we know are more engaging, while also respecting a user's choice to consent to have their data used to target ads to them. And that means that businesses can continue to provide really engaging, meaningful experiences for users, and also target ads to people who actively want to see them and who raise their hand for wanting to see those ads. So that's one business tool that we're looking at evolving with the industry. We're also looking at our measurement solutions and tools to take a privacy-first approach there as well, that continues to preserve advertisers' ability to measure true business value, but with a privacy-first approach. So as we talked about, and as the industry evolves, we know that third-party cookies and also mobile device IDs will no longer be able to measure conversions accurately.
Hold on, don't go to the question.
Yeah, and so as part of that, and I know that question is coming, we are looking at broadly evolving our measurement tools and solutions. So one of the ways is looking at new technology that immediately aggregates data into buckets so that we can preserve that ability to effectively measure the business value of advertising and spending on Facebook, and also make sure that we're doing so with a privacy first approach.
Okay. I'm going to actually pipe in as a panelist at this moment, because Shruti talked about data. Drew, you talked about bringing data together, and Brianna, you did the same thing. And so there's, from my perspective, in my area of expertise, there's two elements I just want to touch on. And one is the idea around the privacy compliant third-party data that EA builds at a market level here in Canada, going down to 6-digit postal code and 3-digit FSA. And is it the solution for disappearing third-party cookies? No. Is it part of an input potentially that we're seeing our partners use? Yes. And how it's being used, and something to think about, is a lot of the demographic, behavioral, psychographic, those signals that are currently captured in cookie information, when that disappears, having this small area geography, particularly in something like a prospecting campaign, reopens the top of that sales funnel so that you're actually getting in front of the audience that's most likely to be interested. And as they click to your website, as they behave, they comes from being a prospect to a legitimate first party retargeting opportunity. And we're seeing a lot of partners beginning to use our data that way to start testing, because they're getting ready. And I love it that they're testing and getting ready. And the other element that is very exciting for our partners who are using it, and other clients that are going to be using this type of data, is that it's no longer just a digital audience or traditional media. It's opening up an opportunity to start thinking about the omni-channel approach and the omni-channel targeting. And omni-channel is a keyword, it's so hot and sexy, but is this an opportunity with these changes to actually move that forward? So that's one of the things I want to talk about. And then Drew, when we prepped, you mentioned safe rooms, clean rooms, safe havens and clean rooms. And this is a big topic, and I'm going to be the one to bring it up and just leave it there for a minute. So Gartner published an article back in October 2020. I'm just going to read the title because I'm getting old. So it's data sharing, and data sharing is a business necessity to accelerate digital business. Okay, we've talked about this, bringing in different pieces of first-party data together. It has to be done in a privacy-compliant way. We cannot be breaking rules by merging data between companies, and nobody wants to do that. Clients give us a lot of trust that we are going to preserve their privacy with their data, that we're going to use things appropriately. The idea of a clean room and a safe haven is that two parties could pick a third group, a third entity who has the technology to bring data together, who has the analytical capability to find the insights that are required, but also has the structure, the processes, and the compliance required that no first party data from either group goes to the other, so that it's maintained in a safe way. And this is one of those old ideas that are new again, because as Sarah mentioned, I have been doing this for over 25 years. And it's something that we at EA, and even in my CompuSearch years, that we would do that for the more traditional media, but we're actually now beginning to do it in a digital environment as well. So that's something else to think about. I'm just going to call out that CMA ad tech document. Again, what we've been talking about here has a whole section. Please, guys, if you want a bit more information on it and how the CMA has positioned these things, take a look at that document on the website. All right, so Google has said it will not replace cookies with a new way of tracking users across the web. And Shruti, you've touched on this. Instead, they're going to explore ways of grouping together web users with similar interests, keeping the web histories private on user devices. So it's testing solutions through its Privacy Sandbox initiative. And if you're not sure what that is, please check out that ad tech overview document, because it does describe it for you. What impact is this group going to have on the advertising ecosystem? Do you think it's the end of user level identifiers altogether? Brianna, you kind of touched on it before. We're going to come back to you, and then we'll move on to Drew.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and so I'll just give our Facebook perspective here. So we view Google's announcement as a clarification of their previous announcement about cookies, in that they're now making explicit the fact that they're not planning to use third-party identifiers once cookies are phased out, nor will they build alternate identifiers. And as Shruti, I think, mentioned earlier in the panel today, they did announce a new API called Federated Learning of Cohorts, or FLoC, in 2019. And while they haven't explicitly or formally announced expectations on how that's going to be implemented, we do anticipate learning more about FLoC, and we believe Google intends to use this technology to preserve advertiser needs while supporting the broader efforts to protect user privacy. And so more generally, our response is that we're really supportive of the development of privacy enhancing technologies like this that are designed to help minimize data sharing while maintaining the performance and the experience of personalized ads. And so we're generally aligned with Google, who, like Facebook, continues to invest in technology to enable relevant and personalized advertising while supporting the free and open web, and building more tools that support privacy protected personalized advertising and collaborating with the industry at large is how we really believe that all companies in this ecosystem should move forward in the service of both people and businesses. So this announcement really just represents one of the many shifts in the broader ads ecosystem that's being driven, as we've talked about, by increased regulation and technology platform changes. So like Google, we are also committed to helping businesses minimize disruption to their advertising in this space while continuing to support and explore privacy through increased transparency, controls, and investing in privacy enhancing technologies.
Okay, Drew, how do you feel about this?
Sure thing. And I'll echo a lot of what Brianna said too, but we too are eager to learn more about FLoC and how that continues to evolve, eager to learn more about unique identifiers that are being championed by the likes of the Trade Desk, et cetera. Also eager to learn how they all fit mechanically within the privacy regulations and requirements that are in place. I do think as the marketplace continues to evolve, solutions like this will present themselves, and the marketplace will ultimately decide whether or not they are sufficient to helping drive desired outcomes. There's so much that can be done from a technology standpoint that a lot of it comes down to business discussions and business decisions that then need to be made. And a lot of the data and pipes can be connected to one another, and rich and deep insights can be delivered and garnered. The challenge then is in the buying strategies too. Are those insights being filtered back into ways of buying that enable the marketplace and buyers in particular to purchase in a manner that's consistent with what the data sets and the analytics reveal. And so I do think that there's a lot of work that's left to be done while we're still working out some of these identifiers, some of these tracking mechanisms, ensuring that they're privacy compliant. But a lot of it will also come down, the adoption of these systems will come down to the buyer's ability to buy in an easier, less friction-filled way. Okay.
All right, we only have a few more questions left, but we have time. So please, guys, I'm just giving you, my panelists, I'm giving you a little time here. You're good to answer. Don't shorten yourself, okay? So the last major question that we have, the changes that are happening on mobile. So Apple just introduced their App Tracking Transparency, ATT framework. And if you haven't heard of this yet, just a quick summary, participants, this is where app developers must obtain opt-in consent prior to serving targeted advertising via Apple's, so many Apples here, Apple's identifier for advertisers, the IDFA. Acronyms are so good. What is the impact for marketers in your opinion? And Brianna, I've had you lead a few times, so let's start with Shruti and then we'll come back to you. Shruti, what do you think?
So it's a very similar sort of impact, right, in the app space in terms of marketers being able to reach their audience one-on-one. And it's this quintessential question, like Brianna mentioned, about the balance between privacy and a personalization. So certainly marketers will be impacted. What really interests me, however, is, you know, how are consumers going to be impacted by this? It really is advertising that powers the free and open internet. All these access to free apps, to free content that entertains and educates us is powered by advertising. Changes like these, while protect privacy and give users the choice, if not accompanied with consumer education, can very adversely impact not just app developers, marketers because of the obvious impact, but also consumers, because the ripple effect of all of this is potentially that they may not have access to these free apps that they once used to, or this free content in the case of open web. So I do think that while these tech giants make these chess moves for reasons that maybe in some cases best serve them, in some cases maybe they do serve the privacy interests of consumers, we should, as an industry, be investing in educating consumers about the impact of their choices. Yeah, I think that's sort of what comes to mind.
Are you saying we need our marketers to actually start marketing to the general public to understand that they need to be aware of what's happening in their apps and on their phones if they want to be receiving personalized information, if they still want to be getting that information, that if they opt out, then that is going to disappear from them?
I think so. I think there needs to be some level of thought leadership in this space from everyone involved in ad tech. We certainly at Quantcast are thinking about it because our mission is to champion a free and open internet. And without advertising, that starts to fall apart. I mean, I read a recent article from Mashable that said only 4% users are consenting on iOS. On the one hand, you know, it makes me feel like, okay, the users have choice, they have the power, they can consent or not. On the other hand, it is hard to imagine what the ripple effect of this eventually is going to be. As a consumer, am I really interested in seeing ads that don't have any relevance to me whatsoever? I think the answer, at least for me, is no. And so I do think there's some level of consumer education that is needed. And then, of course, there is innovation that is needed to ensure we balance the privacy and personalization equation.
Okay. Before we go to Brianna, I just want to remind everybody who's tuned in today, we are looking for your questions. We have a great panel of experts, and if you do want to raise a question or have a statement to share with us, please enter it into the Q&A functionality at the bottom of the Zoom screen. Brianna, what is your take on this?
Yes, thank you. Definitely Apple's changes have been top of mind for us lately and this year, and we understand that the impact is likely disruptive to businesses of all sizes and for marketers, and our teams are tirelessly working on solutions to continue helping marketers navigate these changes and reach their customers and continue to grow. So as you mentioned in the question, the new prompt does require people to opt in to sharing or the collection and sharing of information that's essential for personalized advertising if they agree to opt in on Apple's terms. And so the impact largely is that advertisers may not be able to effectively count conversions for iOS 14 plus users for those who've decided to opt out. And that effectively harms advertisers' ability to understand the value that the ads are driving for their business. They also will not be able to target or exclude ads to opted out individuals based on website or app engagement, which, as Shruti mentioned, means that those people are going to see ads that are potentially less relevant for them, and that's not as great of an experience for those people. So for Facebook, we are now showing our prompt of our own in advance of Apple's prompts on Facebook and Instagram that provides more information about personalized advertising and reminds people about the available privacy controls that we have if they want to decide to use those. We also have actions that we're recommending for advertisers who want to continue advertising on Facebook and Instagram to help them navigate those changes. And at a high level, they are different for both web and app advertisers. But for web, it's most important that advertisers use their resource center to highlight important actions to minimize disruptions to their business and enable event configurations so they can measure conversions from iOS 14 and above users. For app advertisers, we are now required to use Apple's SKAdNetwork attribution API for app install measurement. And that does now provide limited functionality that impacts our ability to target, optimize, and measure. And we do have an external site that highlights all of the detailed recommendations related to Apple's changes and the prompts, and we'll make sure that it's linked in the Zoom chat for everyone to easily access. But more broadly, we do know that Apple's changes affect businesses of all sizes and their ability to effectively use digital marketing. And it's predominantly impactful for small and medium businesses who, and especially in the last year and a half, digital marketing has been their lifeline all around the world. And we know that over 60% of small businesses across 17 countries expect to actually increase their use of digital marketing and digital advertising tools post-pandemic. So if personalized advertising for them is less effective, it impacts their ability to connect with new customers, to build a new customer base across the country and around the world. And that is really crucial for them to discover customers and continue to grow.
It's interesting because you guys raised something as a marketer and who had my client base is a primary media agencies and a marketer, and I help my partners in crime, my coworkers and their advertiser clients. I know what you're saying, but when a little flag popped up on my phone 2 weeks ago and it said, I'll permission to blah, 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 share location, share information, advertise. It was 8 a.m. in the morning. It's like, oh God, no. It's like almost a default, no. And it's like, and I had to go back and say, oh, no, that's not what I want. And I'm an educated person and I understand what the data is being used for. I found it really interesting because I actually, around the same time, got an interesting pop-up on my Facebook and my Instagram about ad for permission-based. And it was like, it was a little later in the morning, I'd had my coffee and I had a bit more of a think about it. So it was, I think a lot of the general public has this knee-jerk reaction. And this is where I'm kind of almost tying into this idea of maybe people are not aware of the bigger impacts of those knee-jerk reactions on their ability to get relevant in communication that's tailored to their needs, and trusting that the environment, CMA members and the partnerships that we have, that we care about their privacy just as much as they do, because it's in our best interest to protect that. So that's, as I said, from a user, everybody participating in this call today is doing this on a Zoom call. I think it's fairly safe to say almost everybody has some kind of smartphone, probably sitting next to them. In fact, Drew, I saw you just checking it. I did. And if we just have, I think we need to do something about communication, about the impact of that knee-jerk reaction on what our experience is going to be with the platforms that we want to engage with. Not even from an ad tech perspective, but from a consumer perspective. I'm just keeping an eye on the time. And again, please submit any questions. We are having questions pop up, but what I'd like to do is, before we get into those, let's just a quick, short, snappy. Let's end on a high note. What do you want people, top piece of advice? What is your top piece of advice for marketers to prepare to pivot for short term and then plan for long term? So Shruti, take us home. Top piece of advice.
So I have 4 points to say. Number one, test different solutions. Like we all said, there's no silver bullet. We talked about user level identifiers. Will 80% of the internet be logged in? Probably not, which means that other solutions will have a place in the future. At the same time, I don't think it's the death of user level identifiers either. So test different solutions. Number two, make first party data a big focus. This goes without saying. You guys have heard it again and again, but it's because it's really important. Having that direct relationship with your customers and consumers is super important. Number three, make consent part of your strategy. and work with tech partners who are making consent part of their the strategy. You may feel like this doesn't impact me right now because the regulation is still not quite there yet. We don't have GDPR. Why should we worry? But as we said earlier, this is going to be an even bigger conversation in the future, and it is already impacting everyone globally. It's only going to continue to increase. And then finally, for advertising on the open internet, take a hard look at your tech stack. Ask the hard questions to your tech partners. How do you plan to interoperate with each other? And with that in mind, look for tech partners with more integrated solutions so that you don't have to worry about how the data is integrated with the targeting capabilities or the measurement capabilities, and look for solutions that are more integrated. So yeah, 4-point advice.
Okay, Drew, what would you, if they can only take 1 or 2 things away from your recommendations, what would you like them to do?
Sure thing. So the first thing that I tell everybody is that it's going to be okay. Right? We're going to continue to move forward and progress. And much to what Shruti was sharing, exploring options that meet your specific needs. Every brand is slightly different. Every sector is slightly different. And so there isn't necessarily a one-size-fits-all solution. So doing your homework and research is unbelievably important. Echoing that first-party data is a priority, and a data strategy around that is extremely important as you look to build out your digital marketing and data plan. And then the last thing I just wanted to end on was really sort of continuing to focus on strategy. Despite the complexity of the digital ecosystem, the fundamental tenets have remained intact, right? The goal of advertising is really fundamentally the same as it's always been. And so nothing can replace that focus on strategy up front. Who are you talking to? What are you attempting to accomplish? And what are the best channels and messages through which to communicate that message? And that is still remains a strong foundation to then determine what performance really looks like and what success looks like for you, for your clients, and for your customers.
Okay. Brianna.
Yeah, we'll really just build on what Shruti and Drew said, because I agree with all of it. And I think also to your point, Andrea, that I think it's important for businesses to make it really easy for people to understand how their data is shared and how it's used. I do think there's an opportunity to drive greater awareness and education there. And from our perspective, tying their consent or their choice to opt in or out to real world examples can really help them understand the trade-offs or the benefits of consenting to data use. I'll also say that implementing business tools with ad platforms and other digital players that are important to their business strategy, that are browser independent, is really pivotal for building those future-proof strategies to continue to drive personalized advertising and data-driven outcomes. And also, I think this really builds on the same points that everyone's saying as well. So we'll reiterate that I think that making sure your company or your team understand how user or consumer data is acquired, used, stored, and making sure that you have all the proper consents necessary to use it and share it will be really important. And in general, our strategy for building for the future is that balance of personalization and privacy that I've been talking about. And so I definitely don't think that these changes are the death of personalized or performance advertising, as some people have speculated, but that we as players and as the broader industry do need to make changes with building for these expectations and privacy first, because these expectations are now the North Star, and this is the next evolution. And so leading businesses must evolve in order to meet that.
Okay, I'm just going to do one little other one. Exactly what you're saying. Test and learn. Build your playbook of alternate solutions, which will become your new opportunities. Because when third-party cookies disappear, when these changes are in place, you are still going to have to justify your budget and your campaign spend to your CMO and your CFO. So now is a safe harbor time to do the testing and build that insights to justify your budgets. I have been keeping eyes on questions coming in through, and you guys have been actually answering the questions that come through. So we're not going to spend any more time with that, but I am going to say thank you very much for the very interesting conversation. So much good content packed in here. And with that, I'm actually going to hand us back to Sarah